All right, it's time to catch up with Mike LaTulip. We got to do this every week in the offseason, Mike. Feels like we're busier now than we are during the actual season. As Illinois has an assistant coach vacancy, we got to talk about with Chester Frazier going to West Virginia. A couple guys enter the transfer portal, and Illinois adds a couple commits since the last time we talked to you on the podcast. Have you caught a breath yet, Mike? Just keeping up with this portal stuff, coaching carousel stuff. I know this is kind of in your wheelhouse. It's an exciting time if you're a college basketball fan, especially an Illinois fan.
Have you caught your breath yet?
I'm coming up for air now with you right now as we're doing this live. That was a busy Tuesday. I can tell you that much.
Yeah. I mean, you're the one that has an article, commitment, all that stuff. I just quote tweet it and give like 2 sentences. So and then I do the film, obviously. So no, but it's fun, man. I know, but like I said, you've been busy. I watched the interview with Whitman. I mean,
Can I ask you about him? Yeah. Like, you're an alum. You played for this program. Like, when you watch that or when you hear from Josh Whitman, what goes through your mind?
The highest of level. Seriously, like I think that interview was 23 minutes, something like that. I mean, just there wasn't any wasted air or there wasn't like any wasted words. Like that's when I hear him talk, it's just, he gets it. And he's eloquent with the way he comes off. I mean, I think he's super thoughtful. And all of that in this day and age is so important because I think I think Cal Perry said it a couple of weeks ago. He's like, coaches something and administrations win championships or something like that. And
Brad said that too.
Yeah. I mean, and Brad and the staff and the players obviously have a big hand in all that, but Josh does too. I mean, I think he's just the way he's built, not only to help build out the men's basketball program, it's across the board. As an alum, it's just, you feel so at ease, with a guy like that that's at the helm.
Yeah. And Brad, I mean, everything he could ask for, he's basically getting, right, as a coach. And that's what you want from administration is that kind of support. So that's been huge to their success. Let's talk about the news that finally came across. It's kind of been the worst kept secret for the last couple of days, but Chester Frazier is leaving Illinois for West Virginia after 3 years as an assistant. That included 3 NCAA tournament appearances, Mike, a Big Ten regular season championship, and a Big Ten tournament championship. So what do you think of this move for Chester to go to West Virginia and the impact on Illinois?
Yeah, look, Chester's done so much for this university as a player and as a coach. You go back to last, 15 plus years for him. He's done a lot. And that's, let alone the last 3 years where you're winning, a number of championships. And I think, just the way he approaches the game and his mentality, the way he connects with players, there's no doubt that he'll be missed in that regard. But you've seen an evolution of philosophy. You've seen, particularly on the offensive end, just how Illinois wants to recruit. And perhaps, that's a factor. And that's what kind of didn't make it a fit anymore. Like I could see that for both sides in a way. But I think he'll do a really good job at West Virginia for all those reasons that I mentioned earlier. And so, yeah, now you just kind of shift your focus to filling that spot and seeing who they bring in.
Mike, how desirable is this job? Because we talk about the success they've had, the resources Illinois has. So how desirable is this job? And like, what do you think Brad Underwood's going to target here?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's incredibly desirable. It's the winningest program in the Big Ten in the last 5 years. And I think, you have a head coach that's incredibly comfortable in his own skin. And that's really important for assistant coaches. When you come into a new environment, a new scenario, it's like, am I going to have input on things? Right. Or is this going to be a dictatorship? And I don't, being close to that program, I don't ever get that sense with Brad Underwood that it's a dictatorship. And that gives coaches the opportunity to develop, coaches the opportunity to grow. And all of that should be really attractive for candidates, because now you got an Illinois program and that kind of has an identity and has a blueprint, for what they want moving forward. And just like players, staff members have to fit too.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. Is there familiarity? Do they understand the direction that this Illinois program wants to go in? And are they open to that direction? I think all those conversations are important, and all those factors are important when it comes to filling that spot. It has to be a symbiotic relationship. It can't be an assistant coming in where Illinois is going to do more for the assistant, or the assistant is going to do more for Illinois. Like, you have to have a balance with both of those things. And those are typically the best hires.
I think we've talked about this before, Mike, but the adaptability of Brad Underwood is maybe one of the most surprising things of his tenure to me, because he kind of came in this Press Virginia style, aggressive, tough, defensive. That's kind of what you're going to win. And ran the spread offense. Not that to say he wasn't concerned about offense, because he obviously did at a high level with Stephen F. Austin. But he has made this philosophical switch to offense is more important right now. And he said yesterday when he spoke with us, the top 4 teams, UConn, Alabama, Illinois, Purdue, 4 of the teams in the Elite 8 had the top 4 offensive efficiencies in the country. So what do you just make of that philosophical switch? And is it the right way to go now in college basketball?
Yeah, I think so. I think we saw that this year for sure. The offense has gotten so advanced in college basketball that really, really good defense sometimes just doesn't cut it. Like, you can't go into March and just rely on simply getting stops and hoping that you can string some things together offensively. But for
Rick
Brad,
kind of figured that out, right? He had to go get Dalton Connect because he said we can't just do it with defense. So sorry.
Yeah, and that made all the difference, because you can allows you to play in a variety of ways and opens up a lot of things for the other guys on your team. But I think with Brad, one of the main things that I've noticed over the years, and I just somewhat touched on it, where he does give autonomy to staff members. And with that, doesn't just mean, hey, I'm just going to sit back and not coach, but it means that you're receptive to new ideas. You're receptive to, your assistant coaches and people on staff that are able to say, hey, this is the way things are trending. And, here's maybe evidence of that. And, at the end of the day, it's still Brad Underwood's decision to make those shifts. But I think he's done such a good job of surrounding himself with really, really smart individuals that are really have a great pulse on what's going on in college basketball and can offer that. And then, then it's on him, right, to make that decision if it's good for the program, if it's not good for the program, or good for the personnel. He's done a really good job of all that. And I think that's what's encouraging, not only as an alum, but as someone that follows his team, is, hey, the changes in college basketball, you at least know that Brad Underwood and the staff, they're going to adapt. And they've done a tremendous job of that over the years with the portal. And then even when they brought in Kofi, going completely overhauling into more of like a 4-out 1-in with high-low looks, but still getting a lot out of Io, where you could play in high ball screens, still getting a lot out of Bello playing in high ball screens. And then, you get Terrence Shannon in, you get Marcus Damaskin, and you have another shift. And, I think they liked what they found last year with some of the booty ball actions. Now, I think they may be a little bit less reliant on it this year without a Marcus Damas. We'll see what happens with the waiver, obviously, but just really impressed with the way he's been able to shift, because I think it's contributed to their sustained winning.
Amani, Hansberry, Sencire Harris, not a surprise. The guy who recruited them leaves. Their roles are in question with Illinois looking to upgrade in their spots, but they entered the transfer portal. Mike, what do you make of those two entering the portal and the impact for Illinois?
Yeah, I mean, this is life at this, when you're at this high of a level. This is life after an Elite 8 appearance. I think, you're already a team that crushes in the portal regardless. I mean, I think you've shown that over the years, but when you make an Elite 8 appearance and you get certain players knocking at your door, it makes it hard, because if you have chances to level up in this day and age, then you have to go and do that. And that's not necessarily an indictment on Sencire Harris or Amani Hansberry. It's more so just the way college basketball has shifted to getting a little bit older. And that just doesn't leave a lot of opportunity for younger guys. But I think just even for Sencire, I just think that there wasn't much of a fit anymore.
Yeah.
The way this offense has shifted, and the way they really want to space and play, read and react, and even in booty ball, like it's hard to have a guy out there that is, a bit of a non-shooter. And then for Amani, I just think, in my opinion, he'll have the best chance to develop somewhere else. And I think he'll develop into a good player. He already is a good player, but I think he'll be able to tap out his development probably somewhere else. So it's a unique case where you have Sencire and Amani, and you could look and say this is probably better for both sides. Because what you don't want to do is, do everything you can to keep these two guys and then still not necessarily utilize them and stunt their development. That's why they have the transfer portal. That's why these players now have this type of autonomy to go somewhere and develop. So, I expect both of them to have good college careers. And just because that doesn't happen at Illinois doesn't mean that, the staff was wrong for letting them walk out the door. And so, we'll see how it all plays out. But I think it is probably best for both sides.
Yeah. And I think if you're an Illinois fan, I understand if you're upset, you can't root for guys. These are kind of fan favorites. Amani, you can see the future of what he could be. Sincere, what he gave you last year. I get why people love that. But you got to have confidence that the staff can upgrade because they continue to show that. And speaking of, Mike, let's talk about two additions they've made since last week, since we last talked on the podcast. Arizona guard Kylan Boswell commits. Champaign-Urbana kid coming home. We did a film room on him. That was fantastic. I suggest people go check that out. But I think you and I agree. This felt like the biggest chip of the offseason so far. Why is he so important to what they're doing this offseason?
Yeah, I think it's one of the best gets in the portal, period, so far. And there may be bigger names, but in terms of the age and the upside and the shift to a system like this, I think that's what makes it one of the best gets. I think his game is accentuated because of the way that Illinois plays. He has great feel. He's a great shooter. He's a great cutter. And when you play in a more of a read and react system with more space, then guys like that tend to take a step forward. So I think he'll make leaps in a number of areas. One of the areas that we touched on in the film is, hey, if we can get Kylan Boswell playing in space more, that allows him to utilize his strength a little bit more. And if he utilizes his strength more, we saw it with Terrence Shannon. Again, two different players, but Terrence's strength is what got him to the free throw line, because he was able to kind of overpower guys, especially one-on-one. So I think Kylan has the ability to do that. He shot one free throw a game last year. And when you shoot one free throw a game, now you're really reliant. If you're a guy whose confidence can kind of peak and valley at times, now it's really predicated on your outside shot only. And you always have ups and downs with outside shooting. So then you start to ride that wave with your confidence. And so if you can get to the free throw line more, it has a ripple effect on the rest of your game. And I think that would be really important for him. And I think he can achieve that in the system. But bottom line, you get a heck of a player who has great feel, has a great competitive spirit about him. I think has great character as well. And those type of guys tend to have success.
And we've talked about his age. He's turning 19 this week. Like there's still upside here, right? Like what is his growth ahead?
Yeah. I mean, I think, shoot, I mean, it's hard to fathom in some of these guys that reclassify how young they are. I mean, Malcolm Hill came into Illinois and we're sitting in the film room, I think for our first exhibition game. Malcolm's birthday is in late October, and we were prepping for our first exhibition game. I'm looking over, I'm like, this kid's 17, right? And he turned 18 in October of his freshman year. I mean, you got a kid in Kylan that's turning 19 in April of his sophomore year going into his junior year. It really is. It's hard to fathom. But it's what makes you so encouraged, because how mature his game is at this age, it's only gonna get better for him. So that's what makes it really exciting. And you get some stability because the hope is that he can be here for multiple years and that you can continue to build with him. And then it's not especially at a combo guard, lead guard spot, that it's not a total reset next year. I think all that certainly plays a part.
Speaking of upside, Carey Booth feels like a huge upside play here for Illinois. Tantalizing talent, 6'10", about 205, 210. So he's got to add some strength here. But a stretch four, showed had some ups and downs as a true freshman, but played 25 games for a high major team under a really good head coach. I know you and I respect the heck out of Mike Shrewsbury. So Carey Booth commits to Illinois. What does he bring?
Super raw. We talked about it on the previous podcast. But I think you get a kid that's really coachable, that really cares. And I say coachable. I touched on this on the pod last time, but I really like seeing a freshman who has all this upside, who probably knows he has a lot of upside, and still is like, hey, you know what? What I'm best at for this team, for Notre Dame as a freshman, is catch and shoot, straight line drive. Don't try to do too much with the ball. That's really important. And I still think that this year there's going to be some more of that for him. I still think he's going to be catch and shoot, straight line drive. And, last year was interesting. Notre Dame, they just weren't very talented. They were a top 40 defense in the country, but they were, I think, 250th offensively. I think Mike Shrewsbury is one of the best coaches in college basketball, especially from an X's and O's standpoint. Yeah. He just didn't have a ton of talent. And Carey was playing alongside of a point guard that had the highest usage rate in the ACC and was inefficient. So, I think playing around, surrounding him with more talent, surrounding him with more space, I think will only help him. But the biggest factor for me with Carey is Adam Fletcher. Like that's what gets me so excited. I've said a lot about Adam Fletcher because I lived it. And I watched Carey and I watched some of the areas that he struggled in. A lot of it was his body. Some of it was just his balance. The two areas he was least efficient in was transition and when they had him as a pick and roll man, right? The guy rolling to the basket. And in both of those situations, it's stuff on the move. It's running. And he is a great, end-to-end sprinter. He's like a gazelle. But getting with Fletch and being able to, because Fletch is flexibility, balance, all that stuff. We talk about like putting on weight.
I was going to bring up, like, he always, you see those photos of like Io, one he's not flexing, one he's flexing, like, and he obviously adds some strength and some muscle, but like the technology he uses, the analytics like that he puts into this, the force plates and all those different things, Mike, like there's more to it than just adding bulk, because you just don't want to be bulky in basketball.
No. And to me, I'm being dead honest. You can look at facilities, you can look at, program history and what this program's done in the last 5 years. I mean, Adam Fletcher, for me as a recruit, would be one of the biggest draws, because I know he's showing before and after pictures. We've already talked about how guys have been able to avoid injury. Guys that came in with injuries were able to play full seasons. Like all that is so imperative. And so, his balance, I think, getting stronger with his lower body, and he'll get stronger with his upper body too. But all of that is something that is gonna that Fletch will help out with, and that's what I'm most excited to see. If he ends up getting here in June or May or whenever it ends up being, that full summer with Fletch, he's going to put on some weight. I think he's going to have a little bit more stability to how he moves, and that's only going to positively impact his game on both ends. So I'm really excited about that with him.
So with Amani gone, you think of like the post pieces, and I know Carey Booth isn't really a post, but obviously 6'10", stretch forward. It's Booth and Merez Johnson, who's Illinois Mr. Basketball and just played for the Team USA for Nike Hoop Summit. What do you add to them, Mike? Brad mentioned potentially adding two bigs now via the portal, and we haven't really seen that show up yet in visits or Illinois being super connected to these guys. What kind of bigs would you try and put, or first big, who would you going to put with Merez Johnson and Carey Booth?
Yeah, I think the way that they want to play, it just has to be a serviceable big. Like I think in this day and age, and this is just my personal opinion, trying to go out and get the blue chip big man out of the portal, it's almost irresponsible. And I say that because just the return on investment isn't great. I mean, I'm seeing the numbers that are being thrown around for Omar Ballo, right? And if that number creeps past 1 million, And it's $1 million for a guy that was 12-10 last year, that can pretty much play one defensive coverage and one way offensively, and is a 49% free throw shooter. So like, you have to try to figure out, okay, who fits, right? You find a big that's smart, that's low maintenance, and that is skilled enough to be able to be on the floor. If they want to go booty ball, then you can make some passes, you can make some reads. Like, I think that's who it is. Like, I think if they end up getting somebody out of the portal that's a 5-man, it's not going to be one of the 4 or 5 best bigs in the portal. I just don't think it will. And sometimes, like, less is more. You can go out and try to buy a team and just say, hey, let's just bring in talent here, but they want to play a certain way. And like, only certain bigs, I think, fit that.
And you look at like Nebraska last year. I love what Fred Hoiberg does in the portal, and like Rink Mast, like, probably didn't get a bunch of people excited, but he was the hub of everything they did last year and kind of allowed them to play that way. If you can find a guy like that, that'd be phenomenal.
Agreed. And Rink Mast, like, you could play him and drop. He could hard hedge. They did so many low holds and rotation where he was nimble enough to get around and get by on that end. And then offensively, you can step him out at the 5. You can knock down shots. And I mean, a guy like Rink Mast would be amazing.
And ideally, you probably want somebody a little bit quicker than him, but like just somebody that can be that skilled. Doesn't have to be your superstar, but I thought Mast was as valuable as anybody on that team. And you know how I feel about Tominaga.
I know exactly how you feel about Tony. Well documented. No, that's kind of the long and short of it there. I think it's going to be a serviceable big. It may not be someone that snatches the headlines or, gets a big time article written about him. But it will be someone that I think fits what they want to do, and someone that can at least make some sort of an impact, even if that's not with counting numbers, right? Yeah. I don't think it's going to be like a 14-9 guy. It's going to be a guy that, maybe could be like 7-5, but just plays a really, really important role for this team, depending on how they want to play. If they do have, I think Carey will play a lot at the 4, kind of like Coleman did his sophomore year. And with that, I think you're going to have a guy that needs to be at the 5, but also you could have small ball situations where Carey's at the 5, depending on who you're playing against. So all that's on the table.
Mike, there's been some big additions to the transfer portal here this week.
Last night.
Yeah, Jeremy Roach from Duke certainly caught my eye. Kobe Brea from Dayton didn't even start at Dayton, was a 6-man, but just a flamethrower, is getting interest from everybody. There's a lot of talent going in this portal, man. And any names interesting you outside of the 2 I named, or the 2 guys I named?
Well, I think you talk about all the talent coming into the portal. It's a pretty darn good year to have come off an Elite 8 appearance.
That's right.
Right. And just where this program's at, state of the program. Kobe Brea, just stud. I mean, he's a stud. He's even better than I think his numbers suggest, and the shooting numbers are incredible. But I'm talking more counting numbers. When you look at 11 a game, sometimes I think people tend to filter down. And he's one of the best shooters in the country. But like, when people make rankings and lists, it's a guy that's 11 a game won't always find himself at the top there. But I think he's one of the best. He's one of the best guys in the portal right now, just because of his size, the way he can shoot the ball. He's great catch and shoot. He was top 10 in the country in offensive rating nationally. But it's incredible when you look at the way he shoots off of ball screens. He was 65% from the field from 2 coming off of ball screens. He was 50% from 3 coming off of ball screens. He was 42% from 3 off the dribble. 50% catch and shoot. I mean, it's about as high level as it gets shooting the basketball, in college basketball. 60% catch and shoot unguarded. Like, I mean, if you leave him, there's a really, really good chance the ball is going through the basket, and he will unlock a lot for this team. I mean, you just see when you put a shooter out there like that, and the gravity that has, and what that could do for a Kylan Boswell, what that could do for a Carey Booth and Trey White and these guys that you've added out of the portal. It's massive. And then Jeremy Roach is another guy that's entered the portal. He's a proven winner. He's won a lot at Duke, but I think what makes him so valuable is that he doesn't need the ball to be productive and to be efficient. You know, pairing him with a Boswell, right? You're talking about two guys that could really coexist over the years with ball dominant players. I think about with Boswell, right? He's done it with Caleb Love. He's done it with Tubelis. He's done it with Kerr Kriisa, being a guy that's handling the ball. Jeremy Roach, he's done it with Proctor and Filipowski and Paolo Banchero and Trevor Keels and Wendell Moore. And like he's been able to kind of, be off the ball, but still be uber efficient and shoot the ball. I mean, he's 42% from three this year. He's near 40% for his career from three. Like all these guys, man, I mean, we can definitely sit here and romanticize about guys that are on the current team and that maybe haven't produced a ton for Illinois, but you want to keep winning and winning at a high level. Like these are the guys, man. I mean, these are the types of guys that you bring in that make a difference. And I look at Cam Spencer last year for UConn. I don't think UConn had a lot of talent. I don't think UConn wins a national championship without Cam Spencer. And like sometimes you are a move away like that. Even though UConn lost, a good amount of guys the previous year. So we'll see how it plays out, but a lot of really good names out there for sure.
I want to take a minute as we wrap up here, Mike. Obviously, Marcus Domask, Brad Underwood talked about it yesterday, is applying for a 6-year waiver. Coleman Hawkins has another year of eligibility. He said he's probably played his last game at Illinois, so we'll see what he wants to do here moving forward. But 4 potential returners on this team right now. I mean, that's how much attrition there has been from a really good team this past year. I want to ask you just quickly about each of these guys that still could have decisions to make and what their potential roles could look like for next year's team. So just quickly, Luke Goody, what do you think of him right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think Luke, again, in this day and age in college basketball, a guy that can shoot the ball and has size is always going to be valuable. Now that just all depends, right? However this roster ends up materializing and how much playing time there is that's out there for him. I thought he really came on late at the end of the year defensively. Yep. He had some big shots in the NCAA tournament, and all that is incredibly valuable. So we'll see how the rest of the roster shakes out. But for a guy like Luke, been in the program, would be going into year 4. He's a guy that understands what the program's about. He's been with the program through this shift and through these different iterations. So I think all that's really important for a guy like him.
I think a lot of things you said about Luke could apply to Ty when it comes to being in the program. Obviously a very different player. What do you think of Ty's role on this new iteration of a team?
Yeah, you hear from this staff, and I think it was on display last year that they really wanted to go out, especially in the portal, go out and get guys with high character. And that just gives you the best chance to win. And Ty Rodgers is a guy that embodies that, right? This is a very high character player. And you need to have high character when, calling a spade here, you kind of shift your offense to wanting more spacing and shooting on the floor. And that led to Ty sitting for, large portions of second halves and to finish out games. And there's some guys that would become an issue with that. And Ty was never that. And no matter how you want to use him moving forward, knowing that you have a guy like that is bought in, that no matter what type of offensive system, defensive system, he's just going to go out there and play hard. There's just, again, a lot of value in that. So, I think the world of Ty and him as a basketball player. And I think he's going to continue to develop. We'll just see, again, how the roster shakes out and, what it looks like for him next year.
Obviously, Illinois is upgrading at guard, but there's playing time in this rotation at guard. And Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn certainly showed some things late in the season. We saw Nico Moretti. It's another guy that could potentially return here, show some flashes offensively. But let's focus on Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn. What do you think he can turn into as a sophomore, probably playing behind 2 transfers in the backcourt?
Yeah, I mean, I think last year was really important for him. I think, you came into the year with certain expectations, or I should say he came into the year with certain expectations, and
Scores 18 in the opener.
then you have 18 in the opener, right? And you're like, okay, this is my team. And I'm not saying he thought that, but that can really shift your expectations. And so, for him to get shelved in a sense in the middle of the season and then just regain his footing by guarding, right? He had a big shot against Indiana that I thought, I'm not saying won you the game, but certainly was a huge moment. His threes in the Big Ten tournament, Morehead State, he hit 2 threes in that first half when Morehead really had it going. So I think this was just a really good learning experience for him and understanding, hey, I know I'm talented offensively. I know I can be dynamic offensively, but shoot, I can be one of the best defenders on this team. Mm-hmm. That's his ticket, man. And I think he really bought into that at the end of this year. It's just a matter of like the freshman to sophomore offseason is always interesting because you usually put on weight, you feel like you got a better grasp on the system, and then you come into your sophomore year with expectations again. So we'll see what those expectations look like. But I do think for Dre, he's talented. He can really guard, and he seemed to really be bought in towards the end of that year. And I think that can really, really help this team and help this team's depth in 24-25. That's crazy to say that, 24-25.
For a program like Illinois, talking about these transfers, like what is the future of high school recruiting? Because it just feels like get the Merez Johnsons, get the Jeremiah Fearses of the world, Mike, maybe get a developmental guy like Jason Jackstis, but that middle tier, I don't know if they're going to be going after those kind of guys anymore.
No, I think the value of, unfortunately, right, the value of freshmen has decreased drastically. I was just sitting around the other day and it came upon me to say, okay, how many true freshmen started for Sweet 16 teams this year? There were 4. It was Jared McCain. It was Momcilovic. It was Castle. And who was the last one? There was another one that I'm missing there. But there were 4.
4 out of 90 spots.
4 out of 90 spots. And if you just go back to 2015, there were 17 freshmen.
Wow.
Starting. So it's crazy how much things have shifted over the years, because they've shifted a lot. And I think you definitely have, it's like there's a tier, right? I think grad transfers are really important. Then I'd say it's multi-year guys. You could still say multi-year guys are first, but there's no guarantee these multi-year guys are going to be multi-year guys. Grad transfer, you at least know it's like, hey, got him for 1 year. You can let it rock. And then I think freshmen are like last now, which is really crazy. They're somewhat of an afterthought, I think, in recruiting. I even think about the Kentucky kids that have decommitted. And it is really, especially now, it is really risky to decommit while the portal's in full swing. Mm-hmm. Because you decommit and you get out of your NLI, and now you're up against some of the best players in college basketball that are in the portal. This isn't like October, November, or December where you're getting commitments from guys because, your team's already set. You're thinking about next year. No one's in the portal. This is really tough for a lot of these kids. And it's what makes it so impressive for these guys that were on those, Jared McCain and the impact he had for Duke, Stephen Castle. Geez, man. I mean, to find guys like that, it really is, because what a lot of those guys have in common, like I think Momcilovic is an NBA guy. May not be this year, but I think he will be. Castle's an NBA guy. McCain's an NBA guy. It's just hard. It's hard to go out there and have guys find real playing time that aren't necessarily like clear-cut pros early on. So, it's the state of prep recruiting has changed for sure. Elliot Cadeau was the other one for North Carolina. I had to make sure I found the fourth.
Well, Mike LaTulip, I didn't plan on bothering you this much, but I guess we should just continue to book this for April at least, and maybe into May, because we got the NBA draft and those decisions coming up, and that certainly could impact Illinois' roster. But appreciate the insight as always, man. I'm sure we'll have enough to talk next week as well.
I'm looking forward to it, man. This is it's the best time of year. I say that. I mean, NCAA tournament's the best time of year. It's just it's 24/7, doesn't stop. And you and I were talking yesterday. I mean, you're like, want to do a pod? I'm like, we'll do a pod on Wednesday, and there'll be 10 more things that happen by Friday. So we'll see what those things are.
So I got to publish this really quick just to make sure it's timely. Mike,
relevant for sure.